Evening class. My name is Angela Wilson. I'm actually going to do a presentation on social judgment theory, how we are influenced before we influence. I was actually very struck by this topic because I know a lot of people they talk about the generalization of social judgment theory, which actually talks about how likely we are to be influenced or convinced to change our minds once we already know about a subject, or how staunch we are in our assessment of situations, or theories and different things of that nature. So right now what I want to talk about is the social judgment theory as it relates to my paper. um, I started off by researching Ray Cooksey, who did an extensive research paper on social judgment theory. And what he came up with is he discovered that there were 8 elements that were essential to the social judgment theory elements. And those 8 were define, understand, identify, relate, target, analyze, capture, and compare. In my actual paper, I actually talk about how these factors um, influence how they're used in different studies that I actually researched. He basically said if any of these factors are missing, then it would be highly unlikely that a person would be able to make a judgment call based on what they believe. He didn't account for situations where you couldn't account for all of the factors, of course. And he didn't conduct the studies himself, so he actually looked at other studies that had been done prior to his article being published. Now, the social judgment theory shapers, one of the ones that I focus on in the paper is chemical signals or chemical signals. Chemical signals are basically internal signals that release physical stressors that actually other people pick up on, surprisingly. I guess in our world we call it being psychic, but it goes much farther than that. Actually, when a person is under stress, they release certain type of chemicals which another person can pick up on. The article that I utilized was Chemo Signals of Stress Influence, Social Judgments by Monty Dalton, C.J.N. and T. Wilson. They tested 15 subjects, and what they did was they placed these pads on the subjects. They were shown these different videos. They wanted to see how their bodies reacted to what they were seeing, repeatedly. And then they wanted to see if these stress factors, these chemical changes in their body, were picked up by people that they would have to talk to about a particular subject. It could have been anything. It could have been something as important as, maybe a person got sick and went into the hospital, and they want to recommend some type of treatment. It could be anything like that. And again, I'm just throwing out possibilities as to what the conversation was between the person receiving the message and the person giving the message. Basically, what they found was based on those chemicals that were released from the body, the presenter's body, that people subconsciously had already made up their minds about who this person was, which fits our definition of social judgment theory perfectly. Another social judgment theory shaper is visuals. Um, Another article by Araya T. Ekhamer B. They talked about how what we see shapes who we are. Well, basically shapes what we think. The more visuals we have, the more we're going to be influenced. We see this every day on TV, like in the media, whether it be like reality shows, which aren't really reality shows. We're kind of like leaning towards it because we think that that's how life really is, because we're being influenced, and it's actually allowing us to make preconceived judgments in our heads, and we don't even know that we have those thoughts in our heads. What we're thinking when we take in that information, visuals that we see. Something interesting that I found was that Araya did a study where they looked at a multicultural community versus a community that wasn't as ethnically diverse. And what they found was the multicultural community was a lot more accommodating and accepting of of different people based on the fact that they had actually visually been around people, which goes back to my previous statements that we're influenced by what we see. Um, and those preconceived ideas are already in there because we're already thinking them, even though we're not aware of it. Another part of, so the next part of my paper talks about how do we condition the future to use the 8 elements of social judgment theory. In the articles that I actually reviewed, I actually stumbled upon an article by Jessica Mallett from 2010 talking about engaging students in social judgment theory. What Mallett did was she actually did her own study in her classroom with students, and they actually had to decide on a topic for the stance. But the one thing that I found with this study was that they didn't have to defend their stance, which kind of didn't, which didn't actually bring the the study to a full conclusion because you don't know if these students would have been able to successfully change someone's position on why they chose a particular way of thinking or not. So I think that was one major portion that was really missing in order to get a correct assessment. We would need to see a full study. In conclusion, social judgment theory is not a one size fits all. It's not like taking a band-aid and sticking it on a cut. It's like you have to tailor it to each person. There are no quote unquote classic cases. It's as varied as the people who are actually don't even know what social judgment theory is. And social judgment theory has to be applied in a case by case evaluation. And I think we can get to a point where we can start to understand people a little bit better if we understand what their preconceived ideas already are. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.